F1 the movie. More like Top Gun Maverick with cars. You've heard it before, but it bears repeating once again. F1 the movie is directed by Joseph Kosinski, director of Top Gun Maverick. The movie is written by Aaron Kruger, writer of Top Gun Maverick, co-produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, producer of Top Gun Maverick, and focuses on giving audiences the crowd-pleasing, immersive experience of being inside a car in the same way Top Gun did with fighter jets. The movie, like Top Gun Maverick, stars an old-school movie star as a reckless, hot-headed veteran as he mentors a young hopeful, with whom he shares a strenuous relationship. If you think I'm being a little too unfair, the producers leaned into Top Gun Maverick as a marketing gimmick. And with Top Gun Maverick being such a great rewatchable movie, you would expect that a film with an incredibly similar DNA will be similarly entertaining. Not every successful movie is a great movie, but Top Gun Maverick earned every dollar of that $1.5 billion box office haul, delivering a thrilling, heartwarming, fist-pumping theatrical experience. The same cannot be said about F1 the movie. Make no mistake, with the international popularity of F1 as a brand, this movie will undoubtedly rake in the big bucks. But unlike Top Gun Maverick, it will not be deserved. Instead of functioning as a strength of the movie, the similarities between Top Gun Maverick and F1 proved to be a weakness. And it's not because the elements borrowed from Top Gun are not well executed in that movie. But in drawing so many parallels with Maverick, F1 only highlights just how better executed these ideas were in the Tom Cruise-led action film. Like in Maverick, Kosinski is not interested in reinventing the wheel, a pun not intended. Unlike Maverick, he's not interested in perfecting it either. Whereas Maverick crafted a perfect portrayal of tried and true storytelling tropes, F1 puts forward a worn-out, lazy variant of them. In the start of the movie, Brad Pitt's Sonny Hayes is living out of his van. His washed up, his potential as a race car driver having been wasted. But unlike Pete Maverick Mitchell, we barely marinate in this version of the character. We hear about the personal strife faced by Brad Pitt's character, but there's a difference between being told something and being shown it. There's no moment where Sonny Hayes lets his guard down and closes the distance between himself and the audience, like the fabulous scene with Val Kilmer in Top Gun. Equally to blame is Brad Pitt, who struggles to bring pathos to this character. In earlier roles such as Seven, Brad Pitt could best be described as a character actor trapped in a leading man's body. Even in a recent movie like Babylon, it's clear that he can still piece through his own movie star persona and create an empathetic connection between audiences and the character. Perhaps the direction he has something to do with that, but he decided not to do that here. He seems less concerned with how his character feels and instead more concerned with how he looks. On the topic of the cast, I was excited to see Damson Idris's portrayal of Joshua Pierce, a young, hot-headed, cocky Formula 1 driver. Having been a fan of his appearance in Black Mirror and the underrated Swarm, I thought he did a fine job here, but not good enough to transcend the inherently cliche nature of this archetype. Good casting should feel inevitable, like you can't imagine anyone else playing this role, and I can think of 10 other actors who would have not only been just as good in the role, but even better. It's not a spoiler to say that along the course of the movie, Sonny and Joshua grow increasingly fond of each other. But instead of feeling like the natural outcome of the story, you can feel the puppet strings of the writer pulling them together. This relationship is the emotional core of the movie, yet it isn't profound enough to get the film to the finish line. In Top Gun, mending things with Rooster doesn't just mean working together as a team. It represents Maverick overcoming the guilt he bears over Goose's death. It's a huge moment that represents forgiveness and signals growth for both characters. In F1 the movie, it never feels like anything more than winning a game, and once they do, there will be no reason for these two characters to ever talk to each other again. Quite honestly, the relationship between Sonny Hayes and Ruben Carvantes, an old friend of Sonny's played by Javier Bardem, is a much more natural, well-defined dynamic, and would have been a stronger, more solid place for this movie to anchor itself in. Kerry Condon plays Kate McKenna, the technical director of APX, Pitt's team in the movie. On the page, her character is an incredibly flat love interest, but in Condon's hand, she becomes a charismatic force who steals just about every scene she's in. Characters and story aside, the majority of people will be going into this movie solely for the racing scenes. And if you're one of those people, you're guaranteed to not leave disappointed. For this movie, Kaczynski and the team built customized cars which can hold 4 cameras inside and surrounding the vehicle, and with Pitt and Idris doing their own driving, it becomes an incredibly immersive experience. I sat at the very front of the theater, which is the ideal way to watch this specific movie, because whenever there is a first-person POV shot, of which there are many, I felt like I was inside the vehicle, making a very sharp turn, one wrong decision away from death. Whenever the characters are racing, the movie works. Whenever the characters are talking, the movie grinds to a halt, which gradually makes the driving scenes less effective. If you want to watch a video of someone racing, you can just fire up an F1 match. If you want to see a dogfight, you can find that on YouTube. What makes these movies special, or at least what should, is the blend of practical effects and storytelling. With barely any narrative to cling onto, this movie becomes nothing but an overlong 150-minute tech demo. There's a climatic moment around the halfway mark of the film, which in a vacuum is a fantastic moment. Unfortunately, because the movie failed to engage me up until that point, I was only passively experiencing the movie, which meant that when the scene landed, it didn't land with the impact that it should. If anyone told you that Top Gun Maverick is just a movie, they lied. Beyond the well-crafted entertainment is an agenda of military propaganda. Kaczynski and Cruise developed the movie alongside the US Department of Defense and the US Navy, who used their influence to ensure they were portrayed in a positive light. And though the movie isn't particularly subtle about it, it also doesn't flaunt it in your face in the same way F1 does. We've seen movies with excessive product placement, but this entire movie is product placement. The movie itself is called F1, and if you don't realize how absurd that is, imagine if Top Gun Maverick was called US Navy. Kaczynski, as we've seen in his previous film, is a sucker for realism, which means you shouldn't expect him to bring a personal cinematic flair to the movie outside of the racing, because everything kind of has to blend in together, which means the entire movie has the lighting and cinematic flair of a car commercial. If F1 grosses as much money as I suspect it will, Joe Kaczynski will continue to establish himself as a modern Spielberg, capable of delivering mass entertainment in space. But unlike Spielberg, it's hard to imagine that Kaczynski has a Schindler's List in him. Sure, Spielberg made mass entertainment, but when you watch something like Close Encounters, you can genuinely feel that this is a story that mattered to him. Whereas a director like Kaczynski clearly cares less about people and more about cars. And for that, I'm giving this movie a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for weekly TV and movie reviews. And if you've had the chance to watch F1 the movie, let us know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'm Cinemike, and I'll see you next time.